I'd forgotten that I had accidentally liked a coworker's photo on social media, one from a local bookstore downtown. Within hours, my phone started buzzing. Then the intercom at my apartment lit up like a fire alarm. I wasn't there, of course. I was watching from the window of my hotel room across the street, tucked behind the sheer curtains as my mother and Olivia stood outside the entrance to my apartment building, buzzing relentlessly. Even from a distance, I could feel the storm. I scheduled the meeting the next morning at a neutral cafe downtown. Not my home. Not their territory. A place with windows, witnesses, and 2 exits. I got there early and sat in the corner. My palms damp, my pulse ticking like a metronome. They arrived together, Mom, Olivia, and Jack. No kids. That was the only thing that surprised me. Madison, my mother started, with a tone soaked in offense, as though I had hurt her. But I raised a hand. No, I said, voice steady. I go first. I took out a printed calendar, one I had marked with every weekend. Every holiday, every night I'd babysat, canceled plans, missed events. A red line through every sacrifice. This, I said, laying it flat on the table, is the life I've lived for the last 3 years. This is how much of me you've taken without ever asking if I could give it. Olivia blinked, stunned. My mother scoffed. But that's what family does. No, I interrupted. That's what paid help does. And you didn't even offer that much. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but stopped when I turned to him. Did you know your kids called me Mommy too last year? I asked. I laughed when they said it. But later that night, I cried myself to sleep. Because even they don't know where their mother ends and I begin. Olivia's eyes welled up. You left without a word. You traumatized them. I leaned forward. You mean I disrupted the system where I'm responsible for your kids, your emotions, your schedule, and mine doesn't matter? You're being selfish, she spat. That's when I felt it. That breaking point everyone fears, but also needs. Family means sacrifice, she added. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, calmly, yes, but it's supposed to go both ways. When was the last time any of you sacrificed anything for me? Silence. Jack cleared his throat and said, quietly, she's not wrong. Mom started tearing up, but this time, I didn't reach for a tissue. I didn't comfort her. I let the discomfort hang. You all say you love me, I said, but what you really love is how convenient I've made your lives. That's not love. That's use. There was no yelling. No throwing of drinks or storming out. Just a slow, heavy shift in air like the moment a storm finally crests and begins to roll away. My mother stood and grabbed her purse. We'll talk again when you're done being dramatic. Olivia followed, but not before muttering under her breath, you broke this family. No, I replied, standing tall. I just stopped being the glue holding it together. Jack lingered. For a moment, he looked ashamed. She's right, he said, eyes flicking to the door. We took advantage of you. And I'm sorry. It wasn't everything, but it was something. After they left, I sat at the table for a while, fingers curled around a lukewarm coffee mug. My hands trembled, but my chest felt light. For the first time in 34 years, I had spoken my truth, not in rage, not for attention, but simply to claim it. And no one could take that away from me. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I moved. The new apartment was small, barely 600 square feet, but it was mine. Clean walls, quiet hallways, a doorman who knew my name and had already been instructed not to allow surprise family visits. It felt like a sanctuary, like breathing air I didn't know I'd been living without. I didn't announce my new address. I gave the information only to HR, my boss, and 3 friends. People who respected my boundaries. People who had earned access to my life. My mother left 2 voicemails that week. One was furious, accusing me of tearing this family apart. The next one, oddly tender, promised that we'll be here when you're done being dramatic. I didn't respond to either. Olivia posted something passive-aggressive on her Instagram story about sisters who weaponize mental breakdowns. I muted her account. Jack, on the other hand, did something unexpected. He emailed me a sincere apology. He admitted that he and Olivia had come to rely on me so completely, they hadn't noticed I was drowning. He wrote, "We've hired part-time help. I'm stepping up more. Olivia's struggling with the adjustment, but I know it's overdue. You saying no made me realize how silent your yes had been all these years." I didn't reply right away. I let the words settle first. I started therapy. My therapist, Daria, gave it a name: chronic family enmeshment. She told me what I'd suspected but never dared believe. What happened to me was real. The erasure, the guilt, the endless caretaking. She also gave me something else: the permission to grieve the version of my family I had wanted them to be. I joined a pottery class on Saturdays, a book club on Wednesdays. I started saying yes to dinner invites I would have declined before because what if Olivia needed me? I even got a library card again. For the first time since high school, I read for joy, not escape. One weekend, I woke up and just stayed in bed. No knock on the door. No crying child. No Olivia texting me from the driveway with a crisis and a coffee order. I made pancakes, played music, walked to the farmer's market. I saw a beautiful ceramic mug and bought it without wondering if it matched anyone else's kitchen. At work, my supervisor noticed the difference. "You're lighter," she said. "Happier, more confident." I smiled. "I think I'm just living." Then came the card from Luca and Willow. Handmade. Markers smudged. Inside were misspelled sentences. "We miss you, Aunt Maddie. We love you. Mommy said you're sick, but we hope you get better soon." I sat with the card for a long time. That night, I wrote them back. Not for Olivia, just for them. "I miss you both too. I'm not sick, sweethearts. I'm just taking time to care for myself the way I've cared for everyone else. That's what grown-ups sometimes have to do. And I hope one day you grow up to always do the same, without guilt." I mailed it the next day. Whether Olivia reads it to them or not, that's out of my hands now. 3 months after the cruise that never was, I threw a small gathering in my new place. No family, no drama, just a few people from pottery, book club, and work. People who didn't know the old version of me, the one who flinched at requests, who apologized for taking up space. An old friend from college, Mia, looked at me during the party and said, "You look younger, lighter." And I realized she was right. I was no longer surviving inside someone else's life. I was finally living my own. I hung a small, framed quote on my new office wall. It reads, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set yourself free." And that's what this was all about in the end. Not revenge. Reclamation. Not silence. Self-respect. Not abandonment. A beginning. And for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for their permission to move forward. I already have mine. In the end, Madison didn't run away. She reclaimed herself. Not with shouting. Not with revenge. But by choosing peace. Choosing freedom. For the first time, she wasn't the helper, the fixer, the forgotten sister. She was just Madison, a whole, seen and free. Sparkles, which moment hit you hardest? Was it the secret escape? The calm confrontation? Or her quiet strength when she wrote that letter to the twins? Tell us in the comments. When did you finally choose yourself? My sister took over my birthday cruise, but I had another ticket she didn't know about. Reddit, I need a reality check. I, 34F, come from what most people would call a respectable family in suburban Seattle. From the outside, everything looks picture perfect. My parents, David and Leona, are retired educators who volunteer at the Botanical Garden and host dinner parties for their circle of wine-sipping acquaintances. My older sister, Olivia, 40F, is a wellness influencer with a shiny Instagram profile, 2 picture-perfect kids, and a healing journey podcast. And me? I work in biotech marketing. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. I've spent the last 15 years grinding in silence, making a name for myself in a tough industry, hoping, maybe foolishly, that someday, my parents might see me for me. But I've always been secondary. The spare. The fallback plan. The family's emotional insurance policy. Growing up, every inch of our house was a shrine to Olivia. Her piano recital certificates. Her perfectly lit ballet portraits. Her volleyball trophies. The fridge had one magnet for my science fair ribbon and 5 for Olivia's youth ambassador sash. I remember once coming home beaming because I'd won second place in a regional writing contest. My mom barely looked up from chopping carrots. "That's nice, Maddie." "Oh! Did you hear Olivia got featured in the school newsletter again?" I learned early not to expect celebration. On my 10th birthday, my parents were busy helping Olivia pack for a college prep summer program. No party. No cake. My mom tried to salvage it by slicing up leftover lemon cake from Olivia's graduation and scraping off the "Congrats, Liv" frosting. I laughed politely, even though the inside of me burned. Clothes? Hand-me-downs? When I begged for a pair of jeans that weren't from Olivia's old pile, my mom scoffed. Why spend money when Liv's barely worn ones are just fine? I begged for voice lessons in middle school. Music had become my only escape. Olivia got a new keyboard and a private tutor. I got Olivia's old recorder and access to free YouTube tutorials. I still remember her violin. It was too big for me, the strings rusty, the bow frayed. But when I asked for one that fit, Dad said, "We already spent on Olivia's music this year. Maybe next year, okay?" Next year never came. By high school, I stopped asking. I kept my achievements to myself. I taught myself to celebrate alone cookies I baked for myself. Tiny post-it notes on my wall for each milestone. A in chemistry, first internship. My parents never noticed. They were too busy planning Olivia's next step, her debate competitions, her university applications, her gap year across Europe. I got into the University of Washington on partial scholarship. They could only help a little because they were still paying off Olivia's out-of-state tuition at a private liberal arts school. I didn't argue. I got 2 part-time jobs. I worked late, studied on buses, drank gas station coffee, and learned to survive on scraps, both financially and emotionally. Meanwhile, Olivia got a shiny new Honda Civic, a care package every month, and a phone plan just in case she gets homesick. I never got homesick. I didn't have a home to miss, just a place where I lived unseen. I'm not writing this for pity. I know there are worse situations, but lately, something's been breaking inside me, and I can't keep pretending anymore. Not after what just happened with the cruise. Not after being used again. I just need to know, is it really that wrong to want something for myself for once? After graduating, I stayed in Seattle and worked my way up in biotech marketing. It's not glamorous like Olivia's online world, but it's honest work, and it gave me something my childhood never did: control. At least, that's what I thought. For a while, things felt manageable. I had my own space, my own pace, and a job that, finally, didn't revolve around someone else's spotlight. But the peace didn't last. When Olivia's marriage ended, she came back to our parents' guest house like a wounded celebrity returning from a scandal. Everyone around her bent to keep her pedestal intact. And with that came expectations, the kind no one actually says aloud, but that weigh on you like bricks in your chest. It started with, "Can you just watch the kids while Olivia gets her hair done?" Then it became, "She needs time to film her wellness series, can you keep them overnight?" Eventually, no one even asked. They just dropped them off. Sometimes with a note. Sometimes not even that. Luca and Willow, 6 and 8, are beautiful little humans. But they're a handful, and I wasn't a parent. I wasn't even consulted. I was just drafted into service. Every Saturday became a shift. Every Sunday morning, sticky fingers on my bookshelves, couch cushions turned into forts, spilled juice, broken vases, cartoons blaring while I tried to finish work deadlines. When I gently asked Olivia to give me notice, she burst into tears. You know how hard this is for me, Madison. You always make me feel like I'm failing. And that's when the real gaslighting began. Suddenly, I wasn't a tired woman with a job and a life. I was an unsupportive monster. You'll understand when you're a mom. Single women have no idea what pressure feels like. Even my mother began weaponizing guilt like an art form. You're so lucky to have freedom. You could at least share it. Freedom? I couldn't even book a facial without Olivia texting. Emergency, Willow's got a rash. Can you drive us to urgent care? Worse, I began feeling ashamed. Not of them. Of myself. Because I wanted space. I wanted weekends. I wanted to not be needed. But in my family, that meant you were selfish. The irony? I started turning down actual career growth. I passed on a mentorship offer because it required travel. My boss asked why. I smiled and said, timing. The truth? I was scared Olivia would have another meltdown, and I wouldn't be there to mop it up. I was becoming invisible in my own life again. Just like when we were kids. Then came my birthday. 35. I didn't ask for a party. I didn't even mention it until everything was booked. A solo cruise to Alaska. Just me, the ocean. And no responsibilities. I told them during Sunday dinner. Dad barely blinked. But Mom? Her eyes lit up. That's perfect. The kids would love that. Olivia. Maybe this is the trip we've been waiting for. I stared at them. What? Olivia pulled out her phone. Let's check cabin availability. Mads, you don't mind bunking with the kids, right? Jack, and I need some alone time. It wasn't a request. It never is. And just like that, my peace became their playground. Something inside me didn't just break, it switched off. Cold. Quiet. Strategic. Because this time, they wouldn't see me coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while the sounds of their voices echoed in my mind. Olivia's cheerful tone as she accidentally took over my plans. Mom's gushing about how much the kids would low. The glaciers. Dad's silence, which somehow cut deeper than anything else. This cruise had been the only thing I'd allowed myself to look forward to in months. I'd fantasized about the salty wind on my face, hours of quiet on the deck with a book, sipping coffee at sunrise without having to hear the word Mom every 5 minutes. But now? I was expected to play nanny while Olivia vlogged her way through gift shops and staged healing moments on the shoreline. By Tuesday, they'd already booked everything. Mom sent an email with a subject line that made my stomach twist. Exciting family cruise agenda. Inside were spreadsheets of activities, cabin assignments, a list of kid-friendly shore excursions. And one line that said, Madison's room, adjoining with Luca and Willow for easy access. Thanks again, sweetie. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes. Not a single person had asked me. The final straw came when Olivia called me that evening while I was still at work. She didn't even ask how my day was going. I ordered matching rash guards for the kids, she chirped. They'll look so cute for the glacier hike. She paused. Oh, and Jack and I booked the spa package for day 3, so you'll have the twins that morning. I told them Auntie Mads is going to make it extra fun. I felt something in my chest collapse. Quietly. Like the final flicker of a candle that had burned too long. I hung up, walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look tired. I looked erased. That's when the idea came. Simple. Quiet. Clean. I wasn't going on that cruise. I was going on my cruise. Just not the one they thought. That night, I logged into the cruise site, canceled my family reservation, and used the refund to book a different voyage entirely, a solo Nordic cruise, leaving 2 days earlier from Vancouver. A smaller ship. Fewer families. No distractions. I paid in full. Upgraded to a private balcony suite. Booked the transfer, the train to Vancouver, and a quiet boutique hotel for the night before. Then I deleted every confirmation email. disabled my location sharing, and started packing in silence. It felt thrilling, like planning an escape from prison. Every sock I folded into my suitcase was an act of rebellion. Every toiletry item was a whisper, "You don't owe them your life." And then came the hardest part, pretending everything was normal. I smiled through family dinners. I nodded while Olivia rambled about how excited the kids were. I even offered to bring games for the flight, just to keep up the illusion. The day before their cruise, I hugged them goodbye with a packed suitcase waiting under my desk at work. The next morning, they would head to the Seattle terminal, and I would be slipping out of town. For the first time in my life, I was choosing me. The morning I left, Seattle was gray and sleepy, mist curling along the streets like secrets. I didn't head to the cruise terminal. I boarded the 6:30 a.m. Amtrak Cascades train to Vancouver with a plain black backpack, a suitcase, and my phone set to Do Not Disturb. My heart beat a little faster with every passing mile, like it was waking up from a long sleep. No one knew. No one could know. The night before, I had written a carefully vague text to the family group chat. So excited for this trip. See you at the ship. I even added a couple of emojis for effect, one of the only times I'd ever used them not out of enthusiasm, but camouflage. Olivia had responded with a dozen planning notes and one voice memo reminding me to bring extra snacks for the kids. By then, my phone's location sharing was off. My voicemail was updated with a generic away message. I had a second email address for cruise notifications, and I'd already alerted my boss at work that I would be completely offline for wellness purposes. No lies, just selective truths. When the train crossed the Canadian border, I felt my entire body exhale, like I'd peeled off a skin I never chose to wear. The boutique hotel in Vancouver was peaceful, wood-paneled walls, a handwritten welcome note, and the soft scent of cedar. That evening, I walked alone along the harbor, watching the ships come and go. A hot coffee in my hand, my thoughts strangely quiet. There were no sticky fingerprints on my coat. No texts asking if Luca was allergic to shellfish. No crying voicemails from Olivia about her burnout. Just silence. The next morning, I boarded the cruise ship alone. It was smaller than the Alaska liner, elegant but cozy. Mostly couples and a few solo travelers like me. My suite had a private balcony with a view of the open sea. I stood there for a long time, just watching the harbor shrink behind us until land was only a memory. That's when the text started. It was just after noon when my phone, still in airplane mode, buzzed hard in my palm. I turned it on for a moment, just to see. 26 missed calls, 42 texts, 3 voicemails. They had arrived at the cruise terminal, and I was nowhere to be found. Where are you? Gate B8. Mads, this isn't funny. The kids are crying. Jack is stressed. Maddie, answer your mother. How could you abandon your family like this? I stared at the screen, numb. Then, quietly, I powered it off. No explanations. No apologies. Instead, I walked to the deck, pulled a blanket over my legs, and ordered a glass of wine. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel guilty for being unreachable. I felt free. As the boat cut through open waters, something inside me started to shift. I realized I wasn't just escaping a vacation I didn't sign up for, I was escaping a lifetime of emotional indenture. Years of being useful but unseen, present but never prioritized. I thought of every time I had sacrificed. Skipping a date to help Olivia assemble Halloween costumes. Turning down a speaking gig because my mom needed a driver to her doctor's appointment. Giving up weekends, promotions, my 20s. They had been so sure I would always say yes. But this time, I had said no with action. And that, I realized, was the beginning of something much bigger than a trip. The first full day on the ship felt like a dream. Not the kind where everything's sparkly and cinematic, but the kind where you finally wake up. Where the fog lifts. Where you stop tensing your shoulders expecting to be interrupted, summoned, blamed, or guilt-tripped. I woke to the soft sound of ocean waves brushing the hull outside my balcony. No alarms. No emergency texts. No tiny fists knocking on my door asking for breakfast. Just sunlight. Silence. And me. At breakfast, I sat alone near the window and ordered exactly what I wanted. Eggs Benedict with extra hollandaise and a second coffee without having to reheat it 3 times because a child spilled something. I didn't even touch my phone. I just sat. Present. Breathing. It was strange how loud peace can feel when you're not used to it. That afternoon, I joined a guided photography walk through a quiet Nordic village. I met a woman named Simone, an artist from Marseille traveling solo post-divorce, and a retired biologist named Greg, who had once lived off-grid in Iceland. We laughed easily. No one knew me as Olivia's sister. No one expected anything from me except presence. And I gave it, gladly. But in the quiet moments, the guilt lingered, just a shadow at the edge of the light. By day 3, I started checking the time subconsciously. 11:30 a.m., this is when I'd be getting Luca's lunch ready. 2 p.m., Willow usually gets cranky around this time. 5:45 p.m., Olivia would be texting me, asking if I'd mind keeping them overnight. I wasn't just breaking a pattern, I was breaking decades of indoctrination. Generational duty. The identity I had been forfeit, the reliable daughter, the sacrificial sister, the ever-available aunt. And yet, I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of being part of a family that valued me. But not them, not as they were. That night, I attended a cooking class on the ship, where I learned to make saffron mussel stew and homemade rye bread. Afterward, a few of us gathered in the lounge for wine and stories. That's where I met Daniel. He was charming, funny in a quiet way, and had the kind of eyes that made you feel like you were allowed to exist fully in his presence. We talked for hours. About books. About work. About boundary setting and how hard it is to unlearn childhood roles. He didn't push. He just listened. Later, in my suite, I journaled for the first time in years. I don't think I've ever chosen myself before without shame. I keep waiting for lightning to strike, for someone to show up and drag me back. But all I feel is steady, like I'm coming home to myself. On the 5th day, I powered my phone back on. It lit up like a Christmas tree on fire. 187 messages, 147 missed calls, 11 voicemails. Some were crying. Some were angry. Some were manipulative in that expertly rehearsed way only family can master. How could you do this to us? The twins are inconsolable. Olivia had to cancel her spa day. We're humiliated. You've embarrassed the family. There was one message from Dad. Maddie, please. Just tell us you're safe. It was different. Not demanding. Just concerned. I texted back one line to the family group chat. I'm safe. I'm on vacation. Please respect my space. Then I muted the thread. Permanently. I turned back toward the window, where the sky was glowing amber over the water. Somewhere far away, Olivia was probably posting cryptic quotes about betrayal on Instagram. My mom was likely calling everyone she knew to declare I was having a breakdown. And the twins, well, they were probably fine, bored, or confused. But me? I was okay. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like someone's plan B. I wasn't the fixer, the backup, the silent stagehand holding up someone else's spotlight. I was the main character. And my story had just begun. The rest of the cruise unfolded like a secret I had kept even from myself. Each day I peeled back a layer of guilt, of obligation, of that quiet, choking grief I hadn't realized I was carrying. It wasn't grief over missing my family. It was grief over missing myself for so long. For the first time in years, I had space to feel. I didn't rush. I didn't apologize. I didn't carry anyone else's needs but my own. I took a surfing lesson in Alisund. I fell 3 times, swallowed salt water, and laughed so hard my ribs ached. No one filmed it. No one needed content. I didn't have to pretend it was perfect. It was perfect because it was real. I went to a candlelit yoga class on the upper deck under the stars. I tried meditation and ended up crying halfway through. The instructor didn't flinch, just handed me a warm towel and nodded. She knew. Somehow she knew. I had dinner again with Daniel. We didn't talk about family or exes. We talked about music and where the best secondhand bookstores were in Copenhagen. He showed me a photo of his dog. I told him about the time I almost adopted a cat but backed out because Olivia might be allergic. He raised an eyebrow. You changed your life for someone else's allergy? I blinked. I'd never thought about it that way. That night, in my room, I opened my journal again. This isn't rebellion. It's recovery. I thought about every time someone said I was so grounded, so reliable, such a good daughter. I had confused being needed with being loved, but they're not the same thing. Being needed is transactional. Being loved is sacred. On the final night of the cruise, I sat alone at the front of the ship. The wind was biting, the ocean endless. For a moment, I missed the twins. Not the chaos. Not the pressure, but the little moments. Luca's crooked smile, Willow's ridiculous knock-knock jokes. Then I remembered the way Olivia used them like weapons. They're asking for you. They're crying. Don't you care? And I did care. Deeply. But I could care without sacrificing myself. When I returned to Seattle, I didn't go straight home. I had booked 2 nights in a hotel near the waterfront. I needed time. Time to prepare. To decide who I wanted to be before the flood came crashing back. From the hotel room, I updated my work emergency contacts. I emailed building security to flag any unapproved visitors. I even started looking at new apartments. And then, late one evening, I made the final move. I opened my family group chat, stared at it for a long time, and then typed, "I'm safe. I've made a decision to take space and reevaluate what I want from our relationships. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Until then, please respect my boundaries." I turned off notifications. And for the first time in my life, silence wasn't scary, it was peaceful. That weekend, I wandered through a farmer's market, bought a lavender plant I had no intention of giving to anyone, and spent 2 full hours in a used bookstore flipping through travel memoirs. I didn't check the time. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't have to be anywhere but here. It wasn't just a vacation anymore. It was a return to myself. The message I sent to the family group chat had been clear. But clarity, I've learned, doesn't guarantee respect. They found out I was back before I was ready.